Okay, fair notice, this is going to be a little bit of a lengthy video, but I want to talk about something that really affects everybody and help educate on some economic issues. So today is August 15th for the next 5 minutes. August 15th, 2021, so that this video gets some context to it. I was talking to a friend of mine and he was telling me something, and he's somebody that I usually rely on for good information, but this time he gave me some information and it made no sense at all, and it's almost unbelievable. So I kind of want to put it out there. I'm not going to name him or nothing. But he was telling me that he heard that the price of gold was going to drop dramatically, and it's a reason that it was going to drop dramatically is because they wanted to put millionaires and billionaire child predators into bankruptcy. And I thought, that's like one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. But I had to explain to him that that cannot happen in our current economic situation. But if it were to happen, here's what would need to happen. So really what this video is going to be about is inflation and its effects and economic policy that the United States government and the Federal Reserve use to continue like the shell game. Oh, you want some money? Go ahead, find it. Can't find it because we screwed it up, kind of a thing. So I'm not going to talk about petrodollars too much, and I'm not going to explain too much about a lot of the tentacles of the American economic system, but I want to, give a general kind of, if this happens, this is kind of what the major things it's going to affect. And if you wanted to get to this result, here's what you would have to do with economic policy. And then I'll kind of explain, why some of the things that we're supposed to rely on, we cannot rely on. And so this is going to be about inflation. It'll be about Social Security a little bit. It'll be about financial positioning, like where do you want to be or where you should be if you think this is going to happen, and why you shouldn't be in other certain financial situations if you think that what I'm going to say is going to be true, or more importantly, recognizing that it's already happening. So it doesn't have to be what you believe. For me, there's some things that are they're going to happen. There's a history of it happening. You should just kind of embrace it. So, moving right along. So what is inflation? So inflation, to make it kind of simple, and I'm not going to any hard, excuse me, bumpy roads, and that doesn't work out very well. Inflation happens when an economy, like the American economy or the dollar economy, we're going to say, puts out more money per person than they did previously. So if you're going to have your population increase by 20% and you wanted to have the same buying power out there, a stable dollar, you would increase the number of dollars in the economy by 20%. Then you would have the same number of dollars per person as the population grows. However, that's not really working in America right now because our population really isn't growing like it used to be. People are having fewer kids, and fewer people are having kids. So we're not growing like we used to be. And if you'll remember, like systems like Social Security rely on a growing population. So the young people, we have to have a lot of young people paying into the system to help pay out the older people that are collecting checks from Social Security. And this is no joke, like a government-sponsored Ponzi scheme. I mean, it really is just that simple, except the government's in charge of it. So you know they're going to do it right? No. And I'm going to tell you why. So, you'll notice that people who are relying on Social Security to retire on cannot rely on Social Security to retire on, and the reason is inflation. If the Federal Reserve note, and I want to make sure that I clear this because I don't want to hear a lot of pushback in the comments about how I'm talking about dollars and dollars don't exist anymore. They do and they don't. They don't exist in the classic idea of dollars being backed by gold and silver and having a stable dollar, but we have notes now. And notes are the same as an IOU. A note is the same as a check. And a check is basically a promise to pay. Here's a piece of paper. If you take it to the bank, they'll pay you something of value. So I want to establish what value is because it's important when we're talking about inflation and what that value is. So silver has intrinsic value, gold has intrinsic value. Meaning that it has value because it's a scarce resource and it's commonly used historically in exchange. You know, you can conduct exchanges with it. But the dollar used to be pegged to the price of gold, and now it's kind of the other way around. Gold is pegged to the price of the Federal Reserve note. Now, because of it, everything's backwards. There's a finite amount of gold, but there's not a finite amount of paper that you can print that says the word note on it. You can literally go online and order as many checks as you want for your checking account. That doesn't mean that if you continue to write on them, they'll be good, but you can print as many as you like. And you can hand them out, and as long as they're good, you know they're good, but when they're not good, they're not good. And so the way our Federal Reserve system is set up and the way the dollar is, the Federal Reserve note is based on the good faith and credit of the United States. Faith and credit. So just take that to mean hopes and dreams. Okay, that's what the Federal Reserve note is valued at. However, it's commonly used as a medium of exchange, and so therefore it has value. How much value? This is the question that we're going to talk about when we're talking about inflation. So, the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. I'm not going to give a history lesson on it. But it was created in 1913, and shortly afterwards, the gold and silver standard, the gold standard basically, was abandoned for the dollar. So then it became based on hopes and dreams. Now, when it was based on gold or silver, and I'm just going to say silver because silver's easy for me to talk about. It has a value that's easy to wrap your mind around. If I said gold is worth, $2,500 or $3,500 an ounce, that's a lot of value to wrap your head around for a very small amount of gold. But silver, on the other hand, is a little bit more palatable. If I said silver's worth $20 an ounce, you know what $20 will get you. You can kind of guess how many gallons of gas it'll get you. You can guess how much groceries it's going to get you. You can get an idea of how many ounces of silver it'll take you to pay your rent. And when rent prices go up, I'll also bet that the value of silver now, since it's pegged to the price of the Federal Reserve note, also goes up, kind of in kind. But what you buy with Federal Reserve notes is not pegged basically by anything except how many are out there per person. Okay? So if our population's not growing, but the federal government is saying, print away, print Federal Reserve notes, more, put them out there, then the amount of Federal Reserve notes you're going to have to buy a bag of groceries or a gallon of gas or to buy electricity to your home or water or anything like that, you're going to need more of it because there's more of them out there per person, and if you had your share, you would have a certain quality of life. So that's kind of to get around inflation. So what are the effects of inflation? Well, right now, with the COVID and everybody who walked off their jobs or was pushed out of their job, a lot of these people are trying to decide if they want to come back and work this horrendous system that they were working before to get the amount of money that they were getting before. And I want to be careful. I'm going back to using the dollar as Federal Reserve notes just to make it easier to say. And when I say money, even though Federal Reserve notes are not money, I'm referring to currency because that's how most people understand it. Because I know I'm going to get flamed in the comments about how Federal Reserve notes are not money. They're currency, fiat currency at that. But regardless, it is what it is. Just for the sake of easy understanding, money is Federal Reserve notes and dollars are Federal Reserve notes. I get it. Please don't slam me. I'm kind of putting that out there for now. So, anyway. So inflation, high inflation puts pressure on wages to go up because you need to make more money to buy a gallon of milk. You need to make more money to buy electricity. You need to make more money to pay your rent. Basically because the price of everything goes up. So what hurts is who's the last person to get the benefit of all this extra money being out there. And I'm here to tell you that it's the consumer. Sorry, this road's bumpy as heck. I'm gonna get on some smooth road here so I don't let the phone drop. So the consumer's like the last person to get the message or the benefits of all this extra money. The first people to get it is government. They print the money, they spend it. They're the ones that put it in the system for the most part, and the rich. So the Federal Reserve right now has interest rates really, really low. So they're basically saying, if you borrow a whole bunch of money, you don't have to pay us a bunch to use it. So right now would be a great time, just on interest rates, to borrow money. But with high inflation, it's even better to get into long-term debt because that is how you hedge against inflation. And some people may not understand what hedge against inflation is. So just imagine that to hedge means to put yourself in a financial situation to take advantage of high inflation. If you hedge against the price of gold, you're hedging that the price of gold will go up, so you're going to invest in something that's going to benefit the price of gold going up. That would be to buy gold. Now, if you thought the price of gold was going to go down, the last thing you want to do is convert your dollars into gold, because later on you're not going to get as many Federal Reserve notes back as you put in. So hedge is to put yourself in a financial situation to take advantage of whatever situation follows. Hedge against high inflation, get into long-term debt. Why do you want to get into long-term debt? So that's to take a loan that gets paid off in a very distant future, like a mortgage. You get a 30-year mortgage, you're going to be paying a certain amount of money for the next 30 years. And if you've got a fixed interest rate, which is what I'm really talking about, then the amount of money you pay is fixed. So let's say right now you make $5,000 a month, you have a $1,000 a month mortgage, and it's going to be like that for the next 30 years. So right now you're spending 20% of your income, or 20% of what you make, because 1,000 is 20% of 5,000, on your mortgage. But 5 years from now, as prices get more expensive and you're making more income, you got higher wages to compensate for it. Let's say you're making $6,000 a month. Well, now you're only spending 1/6, and I'm not going to do the math, but it's half of 33.3. That's what, 16 and a half? We'll say 16.65 or something like that. I don't know, somewhere in that ballpark. Percent of your income is now being used to pay your mortgage. Remember, you were paying 20% before, and now you're paying 16, and some change. We'll just say 17%. 5 years after that, let's say you're making $7,500 a month. Well, now you're spending even less. I'm not going to do the math, but it's a lot less than 20%. So you benefit from inflation because the percentage of your income being spent on your mortgage is less. And so more of the percentage of what you have come in your pockets, you get to keep and spend on other things. Vacations, cars, toys, whatever it is that you want to spend it on. You have more money disposable to spend on other things that you used to spend it all on necessities, just to give an example. You have more free money. Now everything's still going to cost more, but less of what you, the lower percentage of what you make's got to be spent on your mortgage. So let's say, who else would go into long-term debt? Say Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos borrows money against his Amazon stock because if he were to sell his Amazon stock, he would have to pay an enormous amount of money in income tax or capital gains tax, which is kind of the same thing. So to not pay on it, he keeps his money in Amazon and just borrows against it. Right now would be a great time for him to take a $300 million loan that he's going to pay back in 20 years. And probably 20 years from now, as the financial cycles go through, the interest rates will probably be low again, and he'll borrow again. I don't know. The government takes care of rich people. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. It's just which kind of rich people do they take care of. So it's going to happen. But you and I, we can't get loans for the most part in any significant quantity to benefit from this except to get a mortgage. So if you believe that inflation's going up, which means government's printing more money than people, than the population is increasing, then get in long-term debt. Go get a mortgage with a fixed income, with a fixed interest rate. So now I'm going to go to the gold. Okay, so what would have to happen with American fiscal policy to make the price of gold go down? What would have to happen is a couple things. Somebody who's mining for gold could come across an enormous cave of pure gold that's tons and tons of gold. So however much gold we have in circulation right now, figure that it triples the amount of gold that exists known in the world, and it's available. Then the price of gold would plummet by 1/3. If it's worth $3,000 an ounce, which I don't know what it is, then it might be worth $1,000 an ounce. But remember, we're pegging it to the price of the dollar, or the value, I don't want to say the price, the value of a dollar. So if the dollar were stable today, and tomorrow they announced, oh my gosh, we found twice as much gold as already exists in the world, then the next day you would pretty much see the price of gold as pegged to the dollar just plummet to like $1,000 an ounce if it was 3,000. That's one way that it could happen, but that ain't gonna happen. The other way would be for the government to tax the heck out of everybody that has a dollar and not spend it. Just like tax it and throw it away. Burn it, basically. If they did that, there'd be fewer dollars in circulation, and therefore how many dollars you needed to buy an ounce of gold would plummet. Now, how's that going to happen? It's not. So if anybody thinks the price of gold is going to plummet, I'm sorry to tell you, that would have to go against, basically over 100 years of United States fiscal policy. There goes my phone. So this is a great video right now because my phone just dropped and everybody's like, ha, whatever. But anyway, so it would go against like 100 years of United States fiscal policy. So that ain't gonna happen. So now I kind of want to talk about gold and silver. But I'm going to talk about silver because gold behaves pretty much, in a general sense, exactly the same way. So, if you had an ounce of silver in 1950, it would buy you certain things. It would buy you a certain amount of things. So if you were invested in silver, you turn your dollars into silver, what it really does is it stabilizes your buying power. Because whatever you could buy in 1950, you could pretty much buy the same amount of stuff in 1960. You could pretty much buy the same amount of stuff in 1970. The silver prices did some weird stuff in the 70s and early 80s, but when they balanced out and they got stabilized, you pretty much could still buy the same amount of stuff in the 80s, same amount of stuff in the 90s, and you could pretty much still buy the same amount of stuff today. I'll use something like the price of gasoline. People say the price of gasoline keeps going up because it's pegged, in this example, to the US dollar. And everything that's pegged to the US dollar costs more because the US dollar has been pushed by inflation as the Federal Reserve and the government print more money than we have people. So when you talk about the infrastructure bill and the national debt and all of this stuff that goes on, that's just printing dollars basically out of thin air, and you don't have an increase in population to support it. So everything becomes more expensive. It's just the way the market adjusts, everything becomes more expensive, because if the price of everything stayed the same, people would go out of business trying to buy the products that you're consuming and provide services that you consume as well. I mean, it's hard to say you consume services, but if everybody worked for $5 an hour, but stuff started costing $15 to buy that used to cost $5, well, people have to work 3 times as much, and it doesn't work out that way. People just start going, hey, I gotta buy electricity. You gotta pay me 3 times as much as you did 5 years ago, because the price of electricity went up 3 times. The price of my rent went up 300%. The price of my Big Mac went up 300%. The price of everything went up 300%. So to make this all stable, you just kind of bank on it. So that's what you've got to work with. So what basically do you not want to do with inflation? You don't want to put your money in a bank account that's not earning more interest than the rate of inflation, because you'll effectively lose value, because the dollar loses value. So if inflation is 3% a year, then you lose 3% on year 1. So your dollar, which was worth 100 pennies, now buys what 97 pennies would buy. And then when you minus 33% of that the year after, it's 3% loss of 97%, and it keeps going down and down and down. And I'll just tell you that it gets ugly every single year. It almost compounds, and it gets valueless really fast. So if you have it in a bank account, you're losing some value. It's basically the same as taking $10,000 and putting it under your mattress. So when you put $10,000 under the mattress in year 1, you've got $10,000 of buying power. But compared to year 0, which is when you put the $10,000 underneath your mattress, in year 1, it'll be worth 3% less. And 3% less than that. And that's if inflation stays at 3%. But I'm here to tell you that with the national debt doubling as fast as it is, and our population not doubling as fast as it's supposed to, inflation's going to be unfair. We'll just say unfair. It's going to get ridiculous, it's going to get ugly, and you're going to lose a lot of value. So I wouldn't be surprised to see 5% inflation, 7% inflation as the markets adjust. And the one person that you don't want to trust when they say inflation's a certain percentage is the guy who got the benefit of it first, which was government, because government spends inflation printed dollars first, because it's basically printed for the government to pay for stuff. And then the last person that gets it is the consumer, which is you and me. We're the last ones to get the adjustment from the market. The price of your Big Mac's going to go up before your wages go up, if you follow what I'm saying. So you're going to be like last to get the memo that your wages need to go up to adjust for inflation. So it sucks to be us. So I hope that kind of helps. You know what that is. But if you wanted to, you know, argue with me about what gold and silver buys, figure out what the price of gold was at any given time, and then figure out how many ounces of gold it took to buy a car, a brand new car. And then come to today and figure out how many ounces of ounces of gold it would take to buy a similarly equipped car. So if you want to buy your average family car, and say the average family car was a 57 Chevy, for example, how many ounces of gold would you need to buy that car? And then figure out what your average family automobile is today. It could be a Toyota Camry. It could be, it's got to be average. The SUV is not average. And you figure it out, you're likely to find that the average number, or it's not the average, but the ounces of gold you would have need to buy is not far off. But the number of dollars you've got to get to buy it is way off. I think in the 50s you could buy a car for like $3,000 or less. You can't buy anything with four wheels for less than $3,000 unless it's got 200,000 miles or more on it as a junk. You're just buying kind of crap. So, think about what you're valuing something in. And it's tough to value anything in dollars because dollar, as far as value goes, has a history of diminishing return. It's always losing value every single year, basically since the Federal Reserve was created. Now I will argue that the price of things was pretty stable from 1800 to 1900. And it's not to say that prices didn't go up, because I'm sure that they did a little bit, but they didn't go up in any significant amount. It's not like the price of stuff doubled every 10 years or something like that. It probably didn't double in 100 years, is probably what I'm going to guess. And I'll bet that the price of silver and the price of gold, as pegged to the dollar, were stable because the dollar was pegged to gold and silver and how much we had. So keeping that in mind, I'd love to hear your comments. Again, I'm sorry that this is so long, but if you're wanting to put yourself in a financial situation to take advantage of what's going on, sadly, and I hate to give any advice like this, and I'm not trying to give advice, but sadly the hedge against inflation is long-term debt. And it's just the way that it is, because that's the only way you're going to take advantage of there being a lot more dollars in the future, is to fix price debt today. And that's just the easiest way for me to explain it. The only other way would be to invest in a business that is growing, meaning that they're continually grabbing a bigger piece of the market share, which is equivalent to saying a bigger piece of the pie. So since they're getting a bigger piece of the pie, and that pie is all the Federal Reserve notes that exist in the system, and their portion of it, that's probably going to grow faster than inflation, and you'll make money at it. This is why people who invest intelligently and luckily in growing stocks can retire, but you cannot retire on Social Security. It's just a fact. It's been this way since it was created, and I don't think it's going to change, because the people who have the hands in the cookie jar, who write the checks, want to write the smallest check possible, and the only way to make sure to write the smallest check possible is to continually increase the amount of dollars that exist in circulation. So since you invested 30, 40, 50 years ago, your return is going to be greatly diminished. And it's just the same as if you put money under the mattress. When you pull it out from underneath the mattress 40 years later, it ain't gonna buy squat. And I apologize for the cussing. I'll probably have to mark this one up as not suitable for kids, not intended, but it's also a subject matter that's really not, kid friendly. Although sadly this could have had help to high school kids or somebody who's really interested in financial stuff. So I apologize. Sorry, I was a sailor. It's just my mouth. My bad. Anyway, I hope that helps you guys understand and what it means, why pegging things to the dollar is kind of pointless, because it's unstable. It's been unstable since early 1900s, and it's going to continue to be unstable as long as it's based on the hopes and dreams or good faith and credit of the United States. And recognize that it's a debt instrument. It does not have, guaranteed value. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to buy anything this year with it, or buy anything of any significant value with it. Shoot, I remember when Cokes were like a nickel. Well, maybe they weren't a nickel when I was a kid, but they were cheap, and now they're not. That's just soda. Forget it, water is even expensive. Oh my gosh. So anyway, go ahead and do a mental exercise and try to come up with something that is stable to base value on. And I'm pretty sure the only thing that you're going to be able to come across is some resource that has exchange value, meaning that you can exchange it for goods and services, that is of a finite quantity that exists. Gold and silver are a great example because they've historically been used for money for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years. What is not a good thing to base value on is fiat currencies, because they are manipulated. Straight up, they're manipulated and they're worth whatever government makes them worth. And I say that makes them worth because if they print a whole bunch of it and they don't have the number of people to support it, it becomes worthless. And they almost never pull money out of the system. It just grows. It's a big balloon. And you've heard about the housing bubble and the job bubble and whatever bubble that it is. There's a dollar bubble, a Federal Reserve note bubble, and that's what it is. And it will pop at some point, but right now, it doesn't pop. It just becomes worthless. And when it does become absolutely worthless, it'll be something like the German mark, I think it was in World War II or World War I, where it became worthless. The Zimbabwe dollar, that became worthless. And when it became so bad, nobody did business with it. Nobody took it in exchange for anything because they could not rely. The Zimbabwe dollar is a great example because its inflation rate was so high that if you made money in the morning, it would be worthless by the time you got off work. So it was dangerous to hold on to a Zimbabwe dollar because you get off work and have to spend it all, because by the time you woke up in the morning, it'd be worth even less. It might buy half of what you bought. I think it's half, I don't remember what it was called, but the rate at which it went half value was measured in hours, like 22 hours. Every 22 hours, it would buy half as much as it did 22 hours before. That's crazy to think about. And the only thing that makes the American dollar reasonably stable for a fiat currency is that they kind of slow down the rate of inflation. But you put a bad government in there with bad actors that just say, hey, we're going to spend a bunch of money. Let's have a $7 trillion plan or budget, without supporting it with tax funds. Man, you're asking for trouble. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm old, but I'm not crazy old. And I remember when the national debt was less than $7 trillion. And And now we're talking about spending $7 trillion potentially in 1 year. You think it's backed by taxes? I bet it ain't. Our government's real good at debt spending. Sorry. Hate to put it to you like that. It just is. The American government is about as reckless as any other government with fiscal policies and controlling the devaluation of their own money. Now, maybe another episode I'll talk about the petrodollar and we can kind of go over that. But I look forward to your comments. If I said something wrong and somebody wants to correct me, feel free to drop a comment. I'll do my best to try to respond to you. If you got anything out of this video, feel free to like. I don't really care if you subscribe, but you can if you think it's interesting. I try to make a video periodically. I'm sorry, this one's in the dark. I just got inspired and I happen to be driving on a long tow and this and that. But I wanted to get it out while it was fresh in my head. Again, I'm sorry for the bad video. I'm sorry about everything. I could have done this so much better, but I just don't have the time. I've been working over 14 hours today, and this was just an opportunity for me to get out to you guys and help some people get some information. If there's other examples that you have, feel free to put those out. I love discussion going on. The whole purpose of this video and the videos that I make are to, evoke thought and get people thinking and get an opinion on things using common sense. It's common sense that if you make money out of nothing, it's going to become worthless, because if there's a whole bunch of seashells wash up on the beach and you were basing your economy on seashells, well, guess what? Everybody's got a seashell now, and so you need to charge more money for seashells for the coconut you're trying to sell, right? Otherwise, you're going to run out of coconuts, and there's still going to be people with money, and you're not going to be able to take advantage of it. Well, that's the way it kind of works with the dollar. So if the government floods the seashore with dollars, and that's what your economy is based on, hey, you're screwed unless you raise your prices. And if you raise your prices, you need to make more money because everything is going to be more expensive, and that's just the way that it works. I'm sorry to break it to you, and it's probably always going to be like that. I wish it weren't. I wish that we had an honest, fair fiscal system. When it was fair, the government couldn't take advantage of it, and that's just the way that it was. That's why we had the gold standard set in the Constitution. It's why the Treasury Department was pegged with printing coin and money, and that's why the Department of Treasury is not involved with it anymore. It's the Federal Reserve that's in charge of it now, and they're not even an agency of the government. They're basically a privately owned bank that does whatever the government says and charges them interest to use their money, to use their currency. And I'm gonna see if anybody can figure out what does the Federal Reserve require the government to use to pay the interest. And when you figure that one out, you'll get an idea of why you're getting screwed and why we'll never pay it back. You'll understand the audit the Fed movement, the abolish the Fed. These things will all start to come out. I'd prefer it if somebody who didn't understand the audit the Fed and didn't understand the abolish the Fed kind of movements would figure out, why and what the interest has to be paid on to the Federal Reserve. But it is what it is. You'll probably get it from somebody that knows it. But honestly, if you figure it out on your own, it doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you right now, good for you. I'm glad that you did some research and tried to figure it out and make sense of it. I just don't want to give it away, because why should you believe everything that I say? Don't. Go out and challenge me. Try to prove that I'm wrong. I encourage it, because that's how I learn to steel sharpen steel. And I hope that somebody sharpens me. I could be way off. But again, I want to keep this down. I know it's really long already. I'm going on 40 minutes or so. So I appreciate your time. Again, like, subscribe if you want. I don't make a lot of videos. I just kind of do it when I think of something and go, hey, this would be something good to share, and see what happens. So you're not going to get flooded by my videos, but sadly, they might be videos while I'm driving. I could be in the dark, something like that. So that's what we've got going for the video, but I try to put out good information. Forget the entertaining content. My apologies. That's not the kind of guy I am. I try to put out good information. So do what you got to do. Thanks for giving me a view, and I hope that you have a great, wonderful day, and that your financial future takes advantage of whatever you discover. Have a great day, and talk to you later. Bye.